Hello there, welcome back. This is Sheepishly here once again, and today I'm very excited to begin the first video around POE 2. How exciting is that? What we're going to go through is the crafting methods available for POE 2 at the early access launch. And the way we're going to go through the crafting available for POE 2 is from a completely new beginner's perspective. All the basics, as well as some more of the intermediate advanced stuff later on in the video for those of you who have played POE 1 before. But I just want to be comprehensive and making sure that regardless of your level of expertise with POE or action RPGs in general, after watching this video you're going to have a very good idea of what crafting is in POE 2, how you can engage with it, and what are all the options available to you, at least as at the POE 2 early access launch. Now the items in POE 2, as with a lot of action RPGs or even RPG games in general, they have different mods, right? And these mods are little kind of like attributes an item have, whether it's increased maximum life or increased elemental resistances or additional damage. These are all kind of like the benefits the item will bring to your character. Now for an item, you can generally break down the mods into different types, right? The base mods, so these are your attack, damage, and attack speed on your weapons, or armor and evasion on your body armor. Sometimes these items will also have implicit mods. These are kind of unique for each item class. For example, launching one additional grenade on the crossbow. Lastly, and I think the thing that we're going to focus on the most, are explicit mods. These are the blue mods that's kind of sitting at the bottom of the item, and this mod actually determines what the item rarity is. Now we're going to go through the item rarity in a second, but all you have to remember now is that explicit mods comes in two different groups: prefixes and suffixes. It might seem complicated, but all you have to remember is that these are essentially two different pools of mods. So for example, maximum life is a prefix and maximum elemental resistance is a suffix. All this tells you is that, hey, if you want maximum life, you should look for prefixes, and if you want elemental resistance, you should look for suffixes. And items can have up to 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. Again, depends on the rarity of the item itself. Now, what is rarity exactly? Now, rarity simply is how many explicit mods an item have. A normal item, which is white, will have no explicit modifiers. All it has are base modifiers as well as implicit modifiers. So normal items is very common, they're not very good, and it's something that you want to craft on to make them better, to make your character stronger in POE 2. Now, the next tier up are magic items. These are referred to as blue items. For magic items, they can have up to 2 explicit modifiers, 1 prefix, and 1 suffix. You can see that from the get-go, magic items are stronger than normal items. But let's not stop there, because what you really want to get to is rare items. Unlike magic items, rare items can have a maximum of 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. Most of your items will be rare items. A thing to note here though, it is actually very difficult to get to 6 very good modifiers on rare items. Typically you'll have 1 or 2 really good mods and 3 or 4 very mediocre ones. But that's the point of the video, right? We're trying to learn how to craft these really good rare items with 3, 4, or 5 really good mods, and that's really going to give the boost character power that you need to power through POE 2. Lastly, there are unique items. Now for unique items, the mods are predetermined, and you cannot actually add or remove mods, so we will not be focusing on unique items too much for this video. Now let's go through the basic crafting systems in POE 2 early access. Very similar to POE 1, the crafting in POE 2 is done with different currencies, and you can find these currency items by killing monsters. Let's just go through the list one by one. Transmutation orbs is probably one of the most common crafting currencies you're going to find. What transmutation orbs do is that you'll upgrade a normal item. Remember, normal items have no explicit modifiers. It's going to upgrade a normal item into a magic item with 1 modifier. Now this 1 modifier can be a prefix or suffix chosen at random. You don't know which one you're going to get, but you're going to get 1 guaranteed. One thing to note here is that transmutation orbs, you can also disenchant magic items you find that you don't want to use at the item disenchanter to get transmutation shards, and when you get enough transmutation shards, you can build up to a full transmutation orb again, and you can use that to upgrade other normal items you find when killing monsters. The second orb we're going to go through, the augmentation orb, is actually very synergistic with the transmutation orb. What the augmentation orb does is that if you have a magic item with only 1 mod, for example, if you've transmuted a normal item, it's going to turn into a magic item with only 1 mod. You can then use an augmentation orb on it. What the orb does is that it's going to add another mod to the magic item. Now keep in mind, augmentation orb cannot exceed the maximum mod limit on a magic item, which is only 2 mods, and you also can't have a magic item with 2 prefixes or 2 suffixes, so it is quite limited in that way. However, augmentation orb is still a very good option as a follow-up to transmutation orb. You transmute something, you augment something, now you've upgraded your normal item into a magic item with 2 mods. Next up on the list is the Regal Orb. The Regal Orb can be thought of as a more powerful version of the Transmutation Orb, because what the Regal Orb does is I can upgrade a magic item to a rare item by adding 1 additional mod to it. Could be a prefix or suffix in random, very similar to the Transmutation Orb. Now this one's quite important because a rare item is you can now have up to 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes in total compared to only 1 prefix and 1 suffix in magic, which means that the potential of your item has just been enhanced tremendously. Now Regal Orb I like to think of as a way to unlock more exciting crafting options, which we'll go through in a second. You can also disenchant rare items you find to get Regal Orb shards, similar to the Transmutation Orb shards. When you collect enough of these, you can combine them into a full Regal Orb that you can use to upgrade other magic items you find. Now you might be thinking, well, it seems like quite a process to go from Transmutation, Augment, and Regal to craft a normal item. Well, the next orb, the Alchemy Orb, is going to shortcut the process for you, because what the Alchemy Orb does is that it's going to upgrade a normal item directly into a rare item, and more so than that, it's going to guarantee at least 4 mods onto the rare item as well. So it's definitely a very powerful orb compared to the ones we've gone through before. Similar to the Alchemy Orb, we have something called the Chance Orb. The Chance Orb would randomly transform a normal item into a different rarity tier. It could be a magic item, could be a rare item, or even in some cases unique items. But keep in mind that Chance Orbs are weighted in terms of outcomes, so a lot of the times you're going to get magic items, and it is quite rare that you're going to have a rare or unique item as the output. Moving on to some of the more expensive currency items, you have Exalted Orb. This is a fan favorite coming back from Path of Exile 1. It functions exactly the same as well. What it's going to do is that if you use this on a rare item, you're going to add 1 additional mod onto the rare item, up to the full 6 mods, if you remember from the section before. What this will look like, an Orb of Alchemy on a normal item, you're going to get up a rare item with 4 mods. You can then use 2 Exalted Orbs to bring that 4 mods into the full 6 mods onto the rare item. So Exalted Orb is a very powerful way of finishing up your crafting process, and it is definitely something that you want to do quite a bit, but keep in mind there's high variance, a lot of mods to choose from, so the chance of you exalting on the mods that you want, it's pretty small. It does happen sometimes, but sometimes you do get lucky, but a lot of the times you don't get lucky, and the mods you add on with Exalted Orbs are not so much garbage, but not as useful as they could be. The opposite of the Exalted Orb is the Annulment Orb. Again, another return from POE 1. So what the Annulment Orb does is that it's going to remove 1 mod at random from a magic or rare item. So if you exalted on a mod that you don't want, you can try to use an Orb of Annulment to remove that mod. But keep in mind, Annulment Orbs cannot be targeted, so you might remove a mod that you want rather than a mod that you don't want. So again, it's a quite high variance system here. The Chaos Orb, it's different to what Chaos Orb does in POE 1, because in POE 2, Chaos Orb will remove 1 mod at random and replace it with a different mod. So Chaos Orb is kind of like using an Exalt Orb and an Orb of Annulment at the same time. And based on the description, it sounds like it's quite a rare orb, actually, so it probably won't be as prevalent as POE 1. Divine Orbs, now this is the same as POE 1, and again another fan favorite making a return here. This one randomizes the numerical values of an item. For example, if you have a body armor that has 91 to 100 maximum life, and you're quite unlucky, you got 91, which is at the bottom end of the roll range, you can use a Divine Orb to have another go at trying to get to the 100 maximum life roll. Lastly, we have the Vaal Orb. The Vaal Orb, we're going to discuss this in its own section actually. If you're a new player, it's best not to use the Vaal Orb. It is an extremely high variance currency item. It can improve the item or make it quite a bit worse, and regardless of what the outcome is, after you use the Vaal Orb, you can actually no longer craft on the item. If you're a new player, I suggest you check out the Vaal Orb section at the end of this video, because the last thing you want after crafting a nice, very nice item is to use a Vaal Orb and somehow brick the item and make the item unusable. That's probably the last thing you want, so stay tuned to the end of the video if you want to find out what the Vaal Orb does. Moving on to some of the special crafting systems in PoE 2, so this is what I consider to be intermediate systems. The first one, we have runes. Now, items in PoE 2 can drop with things called sockets, and you can add a rune to them. It's very similar to what you see in Diablo 2. In PoE 2, items can drop with different number of sockets. So two-handed weapons and body armor, they can drop with 2 sockets, and other armors can drop with up to 1 socket, or they can drop with no socket, in which case you can use a different orb called the Artifice Orb to add a socket to the item. Runes is something you can put into the socket to improve the item. Now, runes can add another modifier to a rare item, so you can go beyond the 6 modifier limit, which is why runes are quite powerful. However, based on what they've revealed so far, runes are actually fairly low powered. You can see some on screen right now. We don't have anything that's too strong. It's just some resistances, some life leech here and there. But I would actually expect that more powerful runes will be released later. I can definitely see things like unique runes or rare runes potentially. So I think the rune system has a lot of potential, but given what we know so far, rune seems like a fairly accessible and low-powered crafting system is to really round out, the resistances on your character or add a little bit of more life or life leech to your character. Nothing too game-breaking here. If you're leveling and you find armors with sockets and runes, feel free to just use them. It looks like that's something that's fairly plentiful in the early game, as well as in the late game, I would imagine, and until more powerful runes gets revealed, it looks like something you should be doing quite frequently because it is a fairly low-powered crafting system. Essences. Essences is the return of another fan favorite from PoE 1. I love farming essences, but there's a slight twist to it. Essences now has 2 different tiers. You have a normal essence, which functions like a transmute orb, but you have a guaranteed mod type. For example, I have on screen the Essence of Ice here. It's going to upgrade a normal item to a magic item with 1 guaranteed cold modifier. Cold modifier could be added cold damage if it's on a weapon, or it could be cold resistances if it's a body armor, right? So there is definitely some variance to how Essence will function as well, depending on what you use it on. Now, the second version of Essence is called a Greater Essence, which by its name you can tell that it's more powerful. Now, this functions more like a Regal Orb. What it does is that it's going to upgrade a magic item to a rare item, again with that 1 guaranteed cold modifier. If you look at the Greater Essence of Ice I have on screen here. I think essences will be the key crafting system for new players. You're going to find some really nice magic items. You can buy them or craft them or find them on the ground. It's not hard to make a very nice magic item. And then you're going to use an essence to guarantee the mod you want onto your rare item. So now you have 3 desirable mods rather than just 2 mods from a magic item. And that is going to be the basis for all your future crafting needs. So do keep in mind, Essence, I think it's going to be quite a pivotal crafting system, especially for new players. Moving on to Omens. Omens is what we call meta crafting in PoE 1. What it does, and the reason it's called meta crafting, is because it enhances other crafting options. For example, I have on screen here the Omen of Greater Exaltation. If you have the Omen in your inventory and then you use an Exalted Orb, it's going to add 2 modifiers instead of just 1 modifier. So it kind of doubles the effect of an Exalted Orb. There's other ones as well. For example, the Omen of Dextral Annulment. If you have this Omen in your inventory, your next Orb of Annulment will actually target only suffix modifiers. So this is actually fantastic if you have an item with 3 good prefixes that you don't want to remove, but you have a really bad suffix that you want to get rid of. You will have the Omen of Dextral Annulment, therefore you can only remove the bad suffixes, and you will not touch the good prefixes. Similarly, you also have the Omen of Sinistral Exaltation. Similar idea, if you don't want to add any suffixes and you only want to add a prefix, an Exalted Orb will choose randomly between your prefix and suffixes, right? With this Omen in your inventory, your next Exalted Orb will only add a prefix mod. So Omens is what I would consider to be intermediate to advanced crafting options. Depends on what mods are in the pool. You can actually play around with Omens to really target prefixes or suffixes, or really depends on what other Omens are available, really enhance your crafting experience here. I actually expect Omens to be quite expensive, so if you do find one and you're a new player, I would actually suggest you hold on to them and save them for the really good items you want to craft, or even sell them on the item exchange market. The next system we're going to go into is quality. Now, items can be enhanced by adding quality to them. Now, typical items can have quality up to 20%. Now, this includes your weapons and armor, which can be enhanced using armor scraps and blacksmith whetstones, or rings and amulets which can be enhanced using catalysts that drops from breach encounters. To go through the weapons and armors first. Now, using armor scraps and blacksmith whetstones, this will enhance the base mods, right? So if you think about weapons, these are your attack damages. If you think about armors, these are your evasions and armor mods. The thing to keep in mind is that the armor scraps and blacksmith whetstones only modifies the innate properties of these items. For example, if you have body armor, this will only modify the evasion and armor qualities, and for weapons, this is attack damage. So if you have something like a elemental resistance modifier on your body armor, the armor scrap is not going to increase the power of the resistance mods. For rings and amulets, catalysts is actually quite a lot more powerful because these ones will actually affect the explicit mods directly. For example, if you have a ring with maximum life, maybe say 100 maximum life, a 20% flash catalyst will increase that 100 max life to 120 maximum life, increasing by 20%. So catalysts are quite a bit more powerful than armor scraps and whetstones, and likewise it will only drop from breach encounters, which is an endgame Atlas mechanic. Lastly, let's go through Vaal Orbs. Like I mentioned, the Vaal Orbs is something that's quite dangerous to use, and it's one of my favorite things about crafting Path of Exile. When you use a Vaal Orb on a rare item, you can get one of the following outcomes. There's no change. All it does is adds the corrupted property, which means that you can no longer craft on this item. This is like a medium output. It's neither good or bad. Obviously, if you still want to craft on this item further, it's bad, but typically you would only use a Vaal Orb when the item's been finished crafting. So no change is probably the neutral outcome. Let's call it that. Now the bad outcome is to reroll up to half of the explicit modifiers. Now this is a bit of a mixed bag. If you have a really bad rare item, the option to reroll up to half of the explicit mods could be a good outcome. But typically you will use a Vaal Orb when you've already finished crafting on an item, which means you're happy with all the explicit modifiers. So having to reroll half of them at random means that most of the times you're going to make your item way worse than it already is. So this is the bad outcome here. The third outcome is a very powerful, good outcome because it's going to add a special Vaal enchantment. An enchantment is an additional modifier that exceeds the 6 mod limit on a rare item, and this is typically what you want because these Vaal enchantments are very powerful and it's going to really enhance again the power of the item you've crafted. The fourth option, which is special in POE 2, is that it's going to add additional socket to your weapons or body armor, and that's going to ignore the socket limit. Remember how armor items only have 1 socket, but body armor can have up to 2 sockets? Well, with a Vaal Orb, you can actually Vaal the body armor to have 3 sockets, which means you can socket 3 runes instead of 2. Keep in mind, the runes that revealed so far are fairly low power, but if in the future more powerful runes, or maybe unique runes are introduced into the game, I would imagine adding a socket would be one of the most desirable and powerful outcomes for a Vaal Orb. On unique items, there's actually a special 5th interaction, which is that it's going to change the modifier value by 0.8 or 1.2 times. Maybe let's save this one for next time when we go through the unique items in POE 2. Before we wrap up, I just want to emphasize again, Vaal Orbs is a very dangerous orb to use. If you're a new player, I would try to stay away from it, at least in the beginning, because you really don't want to pick up a really good item that you've crafted on and has all the nice mods. Use a Vaal Orb, it breaks it, that's going to feel very bad. I would stay away from it, at least for the first few hours until you get more comfortable with the itemization systems as well as crafting system POE, and then I would recommend you to experiment with Vaal Orbs because in my mind it is one of the most fun and interesting crafting items in POE 2. Well, there you go. That's an overview of all the crafting systems available in POE 2 Early Access. Please comment below if I've missed anything or got anything wrong. Please give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this one from me, where we cover different systems in POE 2 and really approach POE 2 from a beginner or someone who's new to POE's perspective. Well, that's it. This is Sheepishly. I wish you luck on your POE 2 journeys. I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.